dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation.
A new partnership of nations has begun, and we stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. Certain that we stand at a defining hour. Halfway around the world, we are engaged in a great struggle in the skies, on the seas and sands. We know why we're there. We are Americans, part of something larger than ourselves. For 2 centuries, we've done the hard work of freedom, and tonight we lead the world in facing down a threat to decency and humanity. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future. If it is possible, I want to continue to build a lasting basis for U.S.-Soviet cooperation for a more peaceful future for all mankind. The triumph of democratic ideas in Eastern Europe and Latin America, and the continuing struggle for freedom elsewhere, all around the world, all confirm the wisdom of our nation's founders. Tonight, we work to achieve another victory, a victory over tyranny and savage aggression.
Hello, everyone. This is The Secret History of the Jesuits, Chapter 6, The Jesuits in Rome, the Syllabus, Section 4 on page 82 of the book, read by Jörg Lissman and discussed in Belgium on Joggler 66 on YouTube. And my name is Brett Norman, and Jörg Lissman has given me express permission to upload his book reading first on YouTube. And I am doing a commentary, and you may ask, why, Mr. Brett Norman, are you doing an introduction to Jörg Lissman's video? Well, let me explain. Jörg Lissman and I have a bit of history ourselves. I had encountered his channel on YouTube a number of years ago. I believe it was in 2015. And I introduced myself to him on Skype. And he has been helping me in my understanding of this global tyranny that is going on today through the biblical knowledge of this Antichrist system that we live in. And I am very, very pleased to say that I am delighted by Jörg Lissman's reading and discussion of this book, because I learn a great deal from his insights, being that he already has read the book Rulers of Evil and other books that you can find on his channel. I have not uploaded all of his material on my channel, so you'll have to go to his channel. But I was a bit in disturbing frame of mind in 2015 when Pope Francis came to speak to a joint session of our Congress here in the States. And when he did that, it was pretty obvious that America has been deceived so perfectly that the Jesuits can just waltz right into Congress and give you their agenda in your face, and the people are not even willing to recognize it for what it is. And the leaders of this country really don't understand their history, because if they did, do you think that Pope Francis would be even allowed to speak in Congress? It just goes to show what the signs of the times really are. Once you have studied your scripture and you know how this world works a little bit, then it ought to leave you in shame for this United States of America that we live in today. You know, it's just sad how few people really click into this knowledge of old time that the papacy is the Antichrist of the scriptures of the Bible. And there are movies made about the Antichrist. There are politicians that read scripts speaking of the New World Order. And those are the types of subjects that get a lot of attention. But when it comes down to the battle for the Bible and the truth that has been lost through these papal tyrannies, very few people have the attention span to really grasp it. I'm not saying that I caught on to it right away, but I'm telling you that it's possible for many, many, many more people to catch on to it. And I'm ashamed that our country hasn't caught on to it more, being what's in the press these days and how these priests of the Roman Catholic Church, or rather the American Catholic Church, because we don't call it Roman in the United States. We just call it the Catholic Church. How the priests in the church are allowed to just do as thou wilt with the children. This wicked, wicked world we live in. And you can read about the priest pedophile scandals going on all around the world, and especially now in this very large study that was published in Pennsylvania. But I don't want to spare you any of my ranting time here. Let's get straight to Jörg Listman's reading. And I want to personally thank him for his help in the brethren here in the United States, those of us that have eyes to see and ears to hear, to listen to what kind of history we have neglected. So, let's continue onward in the study, and I hope you're doing very well today. And to the future, I wish you all the best in continuing with me on my channel in the study. And please feel free to leave your comments, and I'm sure Jörg Listman will see them as well, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you soon.
Hello and welcome to a new video from Joggler66, Hour of the Truth. Of course, as you have seen with the introduction, this is another reading of the Secret History of the Jesuits, the book by Edmund Paris that he published in 1975, and that tells us a lot about of these things that the Jesuits really do not want the people to know. Not only Christians, but everyone, because they are hiding from everyone. The Jesuits are not just a monastic order. The Jesuits are a secret military order. They are the military arm, the regimini militantis ecclesiae of the Roman Catholic Church. They are the murderers of the Antichrist. Not killing the Antichrist, but killing in the name of the Antichrist here on earth. Everybody, more or less, sooner or later, who exposes them, who exposes the papacy being the Antichrist, who exposes Satan as what he is. Because Satan is transformed into an angel of light, and therefore it is no miracle or no wonder that his servants are also disguised as miniatures of righteousness. And everybody who sees behind the scenes, who looks behind the scenes, who watches behind the curtain, who opens the door and goes behind the door, as another video series from my second YouTube channel from Bill Hughes is called, Behind the Door, will pay with tribulation in this world. Because the Antichrist does not want to be discovered. Therefore, he hides all his actions behind all kind of disguises, and most of the people are so gullible to fall for it. It's the Jews, it's the Freemasons, if anybody even knows the Freemasons. There are a lot of people who don't even know what Freemasons are, or what they do, or that there are any secret societies. People who say, well, everything is out in the open, we live in a democracy, I can read over that in the paper, everything is out in the open, and we are the people, and we control, we actually have control of what is printed and what is on television and all that stuff. Believe me, there are people who believe that. And those are, of course, the most easy people the Jesuits and anybody else can play on. So the secret history of the Jesuits from Edmund Paris is so important because it tells us what's really going on. We get a glimpse behind the curtain. And I want to start this right now with this short little introduction, of course. Today on the 20th of August 2017, we start to read in the next part of the Jesuits. It's still section 4 and called chapter 6 this time, the Jesuits in Rome. And we are speaking about the Syllabus. Okay, the whole chapter is called the Syllabus. What a strange name, Jörg. What does the author mean by the Syllabus? Well, I'm gonna give you a little hint. We are talking about this one. The Syllabus of Errors of Pio IX, or Antichrist Pope Pius IX of 1864, which was published in the same time as the papal bull Quanta Cura that you see in this picture here. Well, we go to that when we start reading. One can read, the author starts, on the PDF page 81 here. I actually have the real physical book and I thought that I was going to read the real physical book, but I decided not to because then I have to make another video after the audio recording. And here I can read the PDF and have the video that I produce right away with it. And you guys are with me, you see me reading and you see the pictures that I put in here, kind of a live video. So I chose for that. But when you have a real copy of the book, I mean, my copy is it's a paperback that my wonderful brother in Christ, Brett Norman from the United States, sent me some time ago. And that is printed in the United States. That is from Chick Publications, but there is no date of when this was printed. Anyway, in this book, if you want to read along, it is chapter 19, so that's a little bit different than in this here, because here we are speaking about section 4, chapter 6, which makes it chapter 19, and that is the Jesuits in Rome, the Syllabus. So the name is the same. So when you have a live copy, it is page 116, and otherwise you read along in the PDF. That is page 81. Now, without any further ado, we're gonna go start reading. One can read in a book from the Abbé Brugret the following passage in the chapter entitled The Clergy Under the Second Empire. Quote, "Particular devotions, old or new, were honored more and more at a time when the Romanticism still exalted the senses to the detriment of austere reason. The worship of saints and their relics, restrained for so long by the cold breath of rationalism, had taken new vigor. The worship of the, I have to say, quote-unquote, Holy Virgin, because there is no Holy Virgin. The worship of the Holy Virgin, thanks to apparitions at La Salette and Lourdes, acquired an extraordinary popularity. Pilgrimages to these places, privileged by miracles, multiplied. The French episcopate favored new devotions. It warmly and thankfully welcomed in 1854 the encyclical letter of Antichrist Pio IX, Pope Pius IX, proclaiming the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. It was also the episcopate brought together in Paris in 1856 for the baptism of the imperial prince, who asked Pius IX that the feast of the Sacred Heart should be made into a solemn feast of the Universal Church. Unquote. Of course, universal, you can replace it with the word Catholic. These few lines clearly show the preponderant influence exercised by the Jesuits under the Second Empire in France as much as over the Holy See. As we saw earlier on, they were and remain the great propagators of these particular devotions, old or new. This perceptible and almost sensual piety made the masses excessively scrupulous in religious matters, especially women. As far as that is concerned, we must admit that they were realists. The time had gone already under Napoleon III, when the public as a whole, the learned and the ignorant, took a deep interest in theological questions. Intellectually, Catholicism had ended its career. It is then more than by necessity, than because of their formation, that the sons of Loyola endeavored during the 19th century and today, speaking of the 20th century, to awaken superstitious religiosity, especially amongst women who make up most of the flock. This was to counterbalance rationalism. For the secondary education of girls, the order promoted the founding of several congregations of women. The most famous and active was the Congregation des Dames, and that's French, so I have to read this in a French pronunciation. Congrégation des Dames du Sacré-Cœur means the Congregation of the Ladies of the Holy Heart. In 1830, it comprised 105 houses with 4,700 teachers, and its influence over the higher classes was very important. As far as the worship of Mary is concerned, which was always so dear to the Jesuits, it was greatly helped under the Second Empire by the very opportune apparitions of the Virgin to a little shepherdess of Lourdes. This happened 2 years after Antichrist Pope Pius IX promulgated the dogma of the Immaculate Conception in 1854 at the instigation of the Company of Jesus. The main acts of this pontificate of Pope Pius IX were all victories for the Jesuits, whose all-powerful influence over the Roman Curia affirmed itself more and more. In 1864, Antichrist Pope Pius IX published the encyclical letter Quanta Cura, and for that we go to the picture that I prepared for you here, accompanied by the Syllabus, which is the Syllabus of Errors, which anathematized the best political principles of the contemporary societies. Now, you see this picture here of the Quanta Cura and the Syllabus of Errors. I have prepared another picture of Quanta Cura and Syllabus of Errors, and this is what you can find when you go to archive.org stream Quanta Cura, the Syllabus of Errors. When you put that into your search engine, whether Google or whatever, it will come up with this full text of Quanta Cura and the Syllabus of Errors. The great papal encyclicals Quanta Cura and the Syllabus of Errors, condemning current errors. Well, we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we are talking about the errors that the Roman Catholic Church thinks, that the hierarchy of the Church thinks, that the Pope thinks are the errors of the society that he lived in at that time. And what were these errors? These errors were that the people thought that they could actually rule themselves, because, according to the Roman Catholic Church, without which there is no salvation, as she teaches, according to the Bulla Unam Sanctam by Pope Antichrist Pope Boniface VIII from 1303, it is absolutely necessary for the salvation of every human creature to be subject to the Roman Pontiff. So, the Syllabus of Errors by Pope Pius IX actually is a response to what we have earlier learned, or what we can earlier learn when we study history a little bit, what was in America the Monroe Doctrine. Inform yourself about the Monroe Doctrine. If you want to, I just mentioned that I do on my second YouTube channel have this reading of Behind the Door from Bill Hughes. There's a part that goes about the Monroe Doctrine. Watch that video. It's about 50 minutes long. It tells you everything that you need to know about that. And the Monroe Doctrine was, I think, uttered in the years 1830, 1840. Somewhere around that time, and it is no miracle that in 1864 the Syllabus of Errors by Pope Pius IX was published. The condemning the current errors, the errors that the people mean that they have the right to rule themselves, where the Pope says, no, I rule the people. The people say we have freedom of conscience. The Pope says, no, I am the conscience of the people. The people say we have the right to think and express our opinion freely. And the Pope says, no, you have not the right to express your opinion freely as long, or you only have the right as long as your opinion is my opinion. And you don't have the right to think freely and to think for yourselves. Read the Quanta Cura, read the Syllabus of Errors, and you get it. Quanta Cura and the Syllabus of Errors of the Supreme Pontiff Pius IX, condemning current errors, December 8th, 1864. Okay? December 8th, probably an important date, because last year in 2016, wasn't that the time when the so-called Jubilee year ended on December 8th, if I'm not mistaken? Modern France, the author says, professes that all French people are equal before the law. The syllabus affirms that ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. Now, this is important, don't you think? This is very important. The syllabus condemns universal suffrage. Modern France professes that all people Modern France professes that all French people are equal before the law. The syllabus affirms that ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. Ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. Isn't that interesting? Well, we go to that because that's on the bottom of the paragraph that I still have to read, but you can already think about that. Why is it not possible in the United States of America to grab one of these pedophile priests that have been abusing little children and bring them before the judges? Think about this while I'm reading the whole paragraph here. Anathema on all that is dear to modern France. And you can, of course, scrap the word France here and put in Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain, England, United States of America. Oh, you will see what your wonderful President Donald Trump has for you prepared, because he said that he will fight for Catholics. And I hope that you saw my Donaldus Trump video series of 3 parts. Otherwise, go to that in Hour of the Truth. Episodes 58, 59 and 60. Anathema on all that is dear to modern France. Modern France wants the independence of the state. The syllabus teaches that the ecclesiastical power must exercise its authority without the assent and permission of the civil power. Did you get that? What does it say? The syllabus of errors that we have just seen here in these pictures. Let's take this one here again. The syllabus of errors teaches that the ecclesiastical, the spiritual, the church power must exercise its authority without the assent and without permission of the civil power. Now, when you remember what the Vatican flag looks like, let's have a little look. Whether I have this under the name flag or I have this under the name Vatican. Let's have a little look here, because I don't know. But I want to show to you, because you know a picture says more than 1,000 words. Here's the Vatican flag. And here we see, what do we see? We see the crossed keys, okay? We see gold and silver, or yellow and white. We see a silver key and we see a golden key. And the golden key, as you can see, overlays the silver key. The golden key stands for the spiritual, the ecclesiastical power of the Pope, and the silver key stands for the civil power, or the temporal power. and the golden key overlays the silver key, and they are bound with this red cord which stands for blood. Because whenever you try to take these two away, because the Roman Catholic Church represents state and church, and we try to take these two away, blood will be shed. Okay? And the Pope says, the Vatican flag says, that the spiritual golden key is above the silver key. What does the Syllabus teach? Let's go back. The Syllabus teaches that the ecclesiastical, the spiritual power, must exercise its authority without the assent and permission of the civil power, meaning the spiritual is above the temporal. The spiritual, the ecclesiastical, is above the civil power. Point. That is what the Syllabus of errors of Antichrist Pope Pius IX teaches. Modern France wants the liberty of conscience and liberty of worship. Now what do you over there in the United States of America want? Do you want to have liberty of conscience, and do you want to have liberty of worship? Do you want to have your Constitution and the Bill of Rights actually working, which states that Congress shall make no law concerning any religion or the well, you know the text better than I do. It's not important. You know what it means. It speaks about freedom of religion. Modern France wants the liberty of conscience and liberty of worship, means freedom of religion. They want the right to worship their God as their God tells them to do, as the God of the Bible tells them to do. The Roman Catholic Church says, no, you worship me as I am God on earth, and you worship me the way that I want. There we have a conflict. Okay? Modern France wants the liberty of conscience and liberty of worship. The Syllabus teaches that the Roman Catholic Church has the right to use force and reinstate the Inquisition. So we just got rid of the Inquisition, and now we are reinstating it, because the Inquisition ran about to 1805. Well, that's what they tell you, except for in Spain, where it ran until the 1970s, and I tell you, the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, as the Inquisition is called today, is still working today. Hidden, of course. Secret, of course. That's why we are speaking about the secret history of the Jesuits. But the Syllabus teaches that the Roman Catholic Church has the right to use force and reinstate the Inquisition. Modern France acknowledges the existence of several types of worship. The Syllabus of Errors declares that the Catholic religion must be considered as the only religion of the state, and all others are excluded. So, this is not only what the Syllabus declares, but I tell you, that is also what is declared when a country signs a concordat with the Roman Catholic Church. Then the Roman Catholic canon law is made the law of the land. And that is the same as what the Syllabus declares, namely, that the Catholic religion is the only official, let's say, religion in that state, and all others are excluded, because outside of the Roman Catholic Church there is no salvation, they teach anyway. And of course they want everybody to be saved. Now modern France proclaims that the people are sovereign. The Syllabus condemns universal suffrage. Modern France professes that all French people are equal before the law. The Syllabus affirms that ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. Now, this is the sentence I asked you to think about while I am reading this paragraph. And now we arrived at this. Modern France professes that all French people are equal before the law. That is a quote-unquote achievement from the French Revolution, right? And the Declaration of the Human Rights that was made there. And that's about the same kind of law that you have in the United States of America. All people are created equal and are given inalienable rights, right? But the syllabus affirms that ecclesiastics are exempt from ordinary civil and criminal tribunals. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that a priest, a Roman Catholic priest, can do anything he wants. He is never responsible to the quote-unquote civil law, to the quote-unquote civil court system that we have to answer to. It's like when a priest drives too hard with his car and he has to come before the judge of that, and the judge cannot condemn him for anything. He has immunity. Do you know why? Because the priest actually is not even a citizen of that country, but he has his allegiance paid to the Pope. He is an agent of a foreign country. He is an agent of a foreign potentate. Now, we read from a citation from Adolphe Michel, Les Jésuites, or Adolphe Michel, the Jesuits, in his book from 1879 on pages 77, the following quote. These are the doctrines taught by the Jesuits in their colleges. They are at the front of the army of counter-revolution. Their mission consists of bringing up the youth put in their care with a hatred for the principles on which French society rests. Principles laid down by former generations at a great cost. By their teaching, they try to divide France into two and call into question all that has been done since 1789, the French Revolution. We want harmony. They want strife. We want peace. They want war. We want France to be free. They want her enslaved. They are a combatant society receiving its orders from outside, from Rome. They are fighting us. Let us defend ourselves. They threaten us. Let us disarm them. Unquote. A very wise person, this Adolphe Michel. And do you see any kind of resemblance to the United States of America in what I just read? It says here, they tried to divide France into two. Isn't that the same, because we are speaking about the 19th century, isn't that the same what they did to you in the United States? You had a civil war, North against the South. Your young nation was divided into two, and here they try to divide France into two. There's nothing new under the sun, and the Jesuits always act the same way. The Holy See's everlasting pretension to dominate civil society was then reaffirmed, as Renan had already said in 1848 in an article entitled Clerical Liberalism. Quote, it demonstrated that the people's sovereignty, the liberty of conscience, and all modern liberties were condemned by the Roman Catholic Church. It presented the Inquisition as the logical consequence of the whole Orthodox system, as the quote-unquote the summary of the Church's spirit. It added, when she will be able to, the Church will bring back the Inquisition. If she doesn't do it, it is because she cannot do it. Unquote. Could she do it? Well, she did. But the Inquisition since that time is hidden under a veil of war. And that Inquisition is coming to a town near you in the United States of America, I can tell you. And if you want to learn more on that, follow Inquisition Update, Tom Friess. There's a reason why he called his ministry Inquisition Update, because there is an Inquisition coming to the United States of America. as it was coming here in the 19th century also to France. It presented the Inquisition as the logical consequence of the whole Orthodox system, as the summary of the Church's spirit. Do you understand what that means? It means that the spirit of the Roman Catholic Church is persecution of everybody who does not adhere to her doctrine, who does not adhere to her teaching, who does not submit to their law, and who does not follow whatever the Roman Catholic hierarchy says and teaches. Everybody who does not go along with the Roman Catholic Church will be presented to the Inquisition in one form or another. And the Inquisition is the logical consequence for the whole Orthodox system. The Orthodox system, we are speaking about the Orthodox Church. That's what they call themselves. So let's be very clear about this, that you get this right. You have, of course, the Western Roman Catholic Church, which is an Orthodox Church, and you have the Eastern Orthodox Church in Russia and Greece and in the Balkans. But the Inquisition is the logical consequence of the whole Orthodox system. Because when you are not part of the Orthodox Church, of the Roman Catholic Church, of the Universal Church, you are anathema. The power of the Jesuits over the Vatican was shown even more strongly a few years after that syllabus was published, when the dogma of pontifical infallibility was promulgated. And that happened, as we know, on Vatican I in 1870. Okay? The Abbé Brugueret wrote that this dogma was to throw over the tragic years of 1870-1871, which put France into mourning, the brightness of a great Christian hope. Now, from Abbé Brugueret, I know that there is a picture of a work of him, because I was looking at to find a picture of Abbé Brugueret, but I don't find that. So we have to deal with this book that he wrote, L'Art de Mourir, which means the art of dying. Second edition. This is a picture I found on the internet because of the person itself. I did not find any picture in my research. So let's have a look at this, because Abbé J. Brugueret is very often cited by the author Edmond Paris in this book. Throw over the tragic years of 1870 to 1871, which put France into mourning, the brightness of a great Christian hope. What was 1870, 1871? Well, France lost the war against Germany, against Protestant at that time Germany, led by Bismarck. And because the Germans won the war, Bismarck was able to found the Second German Reich. So we are speaking here in the 19th century about the Second Empire of France, which in Germany we have the Second Reich after the dissolvement, let's say, of the Roman Catholic, of the Holy Roman Empire of German nation, which ruled for 1,000 years, and then we have the first really German Reich under Bismarck, 1871. This is after that war. Now the same author added, quote, "One can say that during the first half of the year 1870, the Church of France was not in France anymore. She was in Rome, passionately busy with the General Council which Antichrist Pius IX had just called at the Vatican. That council, that First Vatican Council." End quote. According to Monsignor Pied, this French clergy had completely, quote, "thrown off its own liveries, maxims, and French or Gallic liberties." Unquote. The Bishop of Poitiers added that it was done as a sacrifice to the principle of authority, sound doctrine, and common right. A sacrifice to the principle of authority, sound doctrine, and common right. the First Vatican Council, placed all that under the feet of the sovereign pontiff, made a throne of it for him, and sounded the trumpet, saying, "The Pope is our king. Not only is his will our command, but his wishes are our rules." Now, when you read this, "The Pope is our king," doesn't that remind you of the Bible, where we can read in the time of Jesus that the Jews said, "We have no king but Caesar," because the Pope is Caesar. Oh, you're not sure about that? The Pope is Caesar? Okay. I'm gonna show you a picture where the Pope calls himself Caesar. Okay? So, we have a look at this picture here. All hail Caesar. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger that you can see this. Pope Pius IX, and we were speaking about his Quanta Cura, and we were speaking about the Syllabus of Error. He also published in his Discorsi, Volume 1, page 253, the following, quote, "The Caesar who now addresses you, and to whom alone are obedience and fidelity due," unquote. It's no mistake that I've chosen a picture of Pope Francis I when he entered the United States of America Congress for a joint session of the Congress and the Senate in 2015. That is where this picture is taken, and look at him. All hail Caesar. You see all the stretched out hands that greet him and that want to touch him, that want to have a piece of the Antichrist. He stands for the policy that the Pope, who calls himself the Vicar of Christ, the replacement for the living God on earth, that he is also Caesar. So when you read this, "the Caesar who now addresses you," and that comes from the mouth of a Pope, you understand that the papacy in the first place is a political power. The pagan Roman system is never vanished. It's never vanished. It just took on the veil of Christianity to hide itself under the spiritual form. Okay? So, the Pope is Caesar. There's no question about that. The Pope is our king. Not only is his will our command, but his wishes are our rules. Exactly like the Jews said in the time of Jesus when they said, "We have no king but Caesar." This is the result of the First Vatican Council in 1870. Now, a very important point here, my dear brothers and sisters, is that we understand that we have to get off the glasses of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Because in the Seventh-day Adventist Church it is taught that the 1260 days period of the reign of the Antichrist endured from 538 until 1798. But I want to refer you to the research that Henry Grattan Guinness has done, and you can read, among other places, for that I know for sure, in the book Romanism and the Reformation, which the reading Tom Friess does, and I published that on my channel in the Inquisition Update playlist, or my third channel in the playlist Romanism and the Reformation. What was I going to say right now? I lost my train of thought here. I was speaking about, just give me a second. So I was speaking about the 1260 days, and Henry Grattan Guinness in his research, and also Alexander Hislop in his research, in his book published in 1858, written in 1853, The Two Babylons, speaks about that period being from 606 until 1866. And you can do some research on that. I did that already, but I'm not going to include that in this reading because we are speaking here about the secret history of the Jesuits and not about the 1260 days. But you know, commonly we are taught all over the world the viewpoint of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they teach, and I also taught and thought that was correct in the past. The time 538 to 1798. And here again, when we read now this book, we understand that there was another date, and it was in 1866 when the French troops, because they were needed for the coming war against Germany there, left the Vatican, and those were protecting troops that were protecting the Pope and his temporal power. They left in 1866, and in 1870, of course, when we are speaking about here the very first Vatican Council now, that we are talking about here, the Pope lost his temporal power. And because he lost his temporal power, he, of course, was very firm on his spiritual power. And that is the reason why in that very first Vatican Council in 1870, the Pope was declared infallible. You know, the Pope actually was infallible in Roman Catholic clergy point of view forever already. But that had to be made official dogma. And how can you better do that at a time when the Pope has lost the temporal power and is just a spiritual power? He has nothing else to keep him busy with but the spiritual policy of the Roman Catholic Antichrist Church. And that's when he declared himself infallible, which of course is a policy pushed through by the Jesuits that we are speaking about here. The resignation, the author continues, of the whole of a national clergy into the hands of the Roman Curia is clear enough, and because of it, the subjection of the French Catholics to the will of a foreign despot, the Pope, the Antichrist, who, under the cover of dogma or morals, was going to impose on them his political directions without any opposition. The liberal Catholics protested in vain against the exorbitant pretension of the Holy See to dictate its laws in the name of the Holy Spirit. The Abbé Brugueret informs us there had Monsieur de Montalembert published in the Gazette de France an article in which he vehemently protested against those who sacrificed justice and truth, reason and history to the idol they set up at the Vatican. That's a little quote that I'm going to repeat from Monsieur de Montalembert. He protested against those who, quote, sacrifice to the idol, in short or in long, who sacrifice justice and truth, who sacrifice reason and history to the idol they set up at the Vatican. Now, what is that idol in the Vatican that was set up? The Pope. Because the Pope was made infallible. The Pope was actually another time officially declared God. And to him you have to bow down. But because he is not the real God, he is just an idol. Several notorious bishops, such as Father Hyacinth Loison and Gratry, took the same line. The latter, Gratry, not without spirit. Father Gratry said, quote, he published successively his 4 letters to Monseigneur Deschamps. In them he did not merely discuss historical events such as the condemnation of Pope Honorius, who, according to him, opposed the proclamation of pontifical infallibility, but, in a sharp and bitter manner, he denounced also the contempt of authoritative Catholics for the truth and scientific integrity. One of them, an ecclesiastical candidate for the doctorate of theology, even dared to justify false decretals before the faculty of Paris, declaring that, quote, it was not an odious fraud, unquote. And Gratry added, quote, even today it is being stated that Galileo's condemnation was opportune. You men of little faith with miserable hearts and sordid souls, your tricks are scandalous. On the day when the great science of nature was praised above the world, you condemned it. Now I have to see what kind of pictures I else have prepared here, except for Brugueret. But I don't think Le Carnul Libre, no. Let's see, I don't know. I prepared some pictures, but we are not quite there yet to see them. So I will just take the picture of the reading of the book, okay? Another quote follows here. Do not be surprised if men, before forgiving you, expect from you confession, penance, deep contrition, and demands for your faults. Unquote. No need to say that the Jesuits, inspiring agents of Antichrist Pope Pius IX, and all-powerful over the Council, the First Vatican Council, as they were all-powerful over the Council of Trent, were not anxious about confession. They were not anxious about penance, contrition, or reparation at a time when they almost reached the goal they had set themselves at the Council of Trent in the middle of the 16th century. At that time, Leones, who was the second general of the Society of Jesus, taking over after Ignatius of Loyola died, at that time Leones already supported the idea of papal infallibility. Yes! Get it? The Jesuits are supporting the idea of papal infallibility from the get-go, from the start. Why? Why, Jörg? Why are they doing that? Well, because they swear their allegiance to the Pope. And they swear their allegiance also to the Black Pope, but in the first place they swear their allegiance to the Pope. So, when the Jesuits control the Pope, and the Pope is to all the world infallible, everything the Jesuits tell the Pope to say is infallible. The Jesuits are infallible. Who does rule when the Pope is infallible, but the Jesuits control the Pope? The Pope or the Jesuits? You answer that question. I can answer it for you, but you can answer it for yourself, right? Leones, the second general of the Society of Jesus, already in the middle of the 16th century, during the Council of Trent, which ran between 1545 to 1563, supported the idea of papal infallibility, because he knew that he had to take control over the Pope. It's like when they say this, you know, when you control the money, you control the nation. Well, when you control the Pope, you control the whole world. Do you know what the dogma of the Jesuits actually is? The Church to rule the Church to rule the world, the Pope to rule the Church, and the Jesuits to rule the Pope. That's their maxim. And that's why Leones already supported the idea of papal infallibility in the middle of the 16th century. Now it only meant consecrating as a dogma a pretension nearly as old as the papacy itself. No other council until then had been willing to ratify it, the papal infallibility. But the time seemed just right then. Besides, the patient work of the Jesuits had prepared the national clergy for the surrender of their last liberties, the imminent collapse of the Pope's temporal power. It happened before the council voted, called for a reinforcement of his spiritual authority, according to the Ultramontanes. Now this is a very important sentence. Yeah? I hope you agree. I just told you that when we take off the glasses of the Seventh-day Adventist teaching of the 1260 days, 3.5 months. Time, times, and the dividing of time. And don't always look at 538 through 1798, even though the General Berthier went under the command of Napoleon, who was a high-level Freemason and controlled by the Jesuit order that was at that time forbidden, went to the Vatican and kept the Pope captive and took him to France, where he died a little later. We have to consider the research of Henry Grattan Guinness and Alexander Hislop and probably even other renowned historians that count the time from 606, that is the time that the papacy retook the title of Pontifex Maximus, by the way, and the time of 1866, which is just before this very first Vatican Council that we are talking about here, and where it says the imminent collapse of the Pope's temporal power happened before the council voted. And that's why it called for a reinforcement of his spiritual authority. Yeah? This is very, very, very important. Reinforcement of spiritual authority. I'm going to highlight this so you can see it better. Because he lost his temporal power, his spiritual authority needs to be reinforced. Now, what did I tell you when we were watching at the Vatican flag? What did I tell you happens when you separate the civil key from the golden key? Blood will flow. And what blood was flowing? Well, with the French we will have to learn, when we keep on reading this book, about the Crimean War, about the Mexican War, and of course also in the very First World War. All these wars, all this bloodshed in all these wars was because the temporal and the spiritual key had been separated. And that is something that the Vatican cannot allow. So in this very first Vatican Council in 1870, they needed a reinforcement of the spiritual authority because his temporal authority was gone. And they chose for what Leonis, the second general of the Society of Jesus, already supported in the 16th century, the papal infallibility. The civil power is gone. Okay, we enforce the spiritual power. Okay? Interesting, huh? Always do your own research. Don't believe me, but try to see the bigger picture when you put different researchers together. Now the argument prevailed, and the Dictatus Papae, the dictate of the Pope, Dictatus Papae of Antichrist Pope Gregory VII, principle of the medieval theocracy, triumphed right in the middle of the 19th century. What the new dogma especially consecrated was the omnipotence of the company of Jesus in the Roman Church. Here you can see, if you didn't see it before, if you do not agree with me when I say the White Pope was already in control from Clement XIII on, the one who reigned before Clement XIV forbid the Society of Jesus in 1773, that there already the White Pope was under the rule of the Black Pope, then you can read this here. What the new dogma especially consecrated was the omnipotence of the company of Jesus in the Roman Church. So when the company of Jesus is omnipotent, it is above the Pope, right? Now, under the cover of the Jesuits, who have established themselves at the Vatican since the secular powers have rejected them from all free countries as an association of malefactors, the papacy has aspired to new ambitions. These evil men who have made the gospel into a spectacle of tears and blood remain the worst enemies of democracy, and freedom of thought dominate the Roman Curia. All their efforts concentrate on maintaining in the Church their pernicious preponderance and shameful doctrines. And we continue with another quote from Father Grétry, also quoted by Abbé J. Brugret, which picture of his book L'Art de Mourir I put in here. Quote, dedicated to the cause of extreme centralization, irreducible apostles of theocracy, they are the recognized masters of contemporary Catholicism and stamp their seal on its theology, its official piety, and its crooked politics. Why didn't I highlight this one? This is a very interesting quote that we can read here from Father Grétry. Dedicated to the cause of extreme centralization, irreducible apostles of theocracy, that's what they are. That's what they think they are, the Jesuits. I like this color. Irreducible apostles of theocracy. What is a theocracy? A theocracy is where you have no reign but God, where you have a church state. The only real true theocracy in this world that ever was the time before the Jews wanted to have a king in the Old Testament, before Samuel chapter 8. That was a theocracy under the living God, under the Creator God. But here we are speaking, of course, of a theocracy of the God of this world, Satan. Dedicated to the cause of extreme centralization, irreducible apostles of theocracy, the Jesuits, they, the Jesuits, are the recognized masters of contemporary Catholicism, and they, the Jesuits, stamp their seal on its theology, its official piety, and its crooked politics. True Janissaries of the Vatican, they inspire everything, rule everything, penetrate everywhere, set up informing as a system of government, faithful to a casuistry whose profound immorality has been revealed by history and inspired Pascal's immortal pages of sublime mockery. Through the Syllabus of Errors of 1864, which they, the Jesuits themselves, drew up, Antichrist Pope Pius IX declared war on all free thought and sanctioned a few years later the dogma of infallibility, which is a real historical anachronism and of which modern science could not care less. Unquote. From Father Grétry. For those who against all probability would persist to see a spiteful exaggeration and disparagement in the lines we just quoted, we cannot do better than present the confirmation itself of these facts, from the very orthodox pen of M. Daniel Robs. This confirmation carries even more weight by the fact that it was published in 1959 under the title The Re-establishment of the Company of Jesus in the Jesuits' own publication Etude. Now, this is a picture, this is a magazine, a Jesuit magazine that I prepared a picture for. I think I have that here. Etude. Isn't that here? Here it is. This is Etude, a Jesuit magazine. Okay? So, we read. because it is then in a true speech for the defense that we read in Etude, a Jesuit magazine in France, quote, "For the many reasons this reorganization of the Company of Jesus had a considerable historical importance. The Holy See rediscovered this faithful band, utterly devoted to its cause, and which was to be needed soon after. Many fathers were to exercise during that century and until now a discreet but deep influence on certain dispositions taken by the Vatican. A kind of proverb was even heard in Rome, quote, 'The Pope's penholders are Jesuits.' Means everything that the Pope writes or says is done by the Jesuits. Their influence," the magazine Etude continues, "their influence was obvious in the development of the worship of the Sacred Heart as well as in the proclamation of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, in the editing of the Syllabus of Errors as well as in the definition of infallibility. The Civiltà Cattolica, founded by the Neapolitan Jesuit Carlo Curci, was supposed to reflect the Pope's thought during most of Pope Pius IX's pontificate." Unquote. Speaking about Civiltà Cattolica, the picture here, the Jesuit magazine, that states that fascism is the policy that resembles most closely the idea of the Roman Catholic Church. But that's another quote for another time. This confession is clear enough. We would only remind the departed spirit of this pious academician that, logically, and judging by all the previous context, it was rather the Pope's thought which was reflected in the opinions of the Civiltà Cattolica. But the Pope's thoughts are the thoughts of the Jesuits. No need to say that the Jesuits, all powerful in Rome, as much because of their spirit as of their organization, were going to engage the papacy in international politics more and more, as Monsieur Louis Roguelin wrote, quote, "Since she, the Roman Catholic Church, lost her temporal power, the Roman Catholic Church took advantage of every opportunity to regain all the ground she was constrained to abandon through a recrudescence of diplomatic activities. As her cleverly concealed scheme is to divide in order to reign, she tried to turn every conflict in her favor." Divide and conquer, eh? Divide in order to reign. Now, the word recrudescence that I've just read here is maybe not known to every one of you. I didn't know it, so I looked it up. And first, I didn't even see it was an English word. It was a French word. It is then, of course, pronounced recrudescence. But you can also pronounce it English, recrudescence, and then it means an escalation. It means a new outbreak after a period of abatement or inactivity. Now, what recrudescence are we speaking about here? Well, the Jesuits were forbidden between 1774 and 1773 and 1814, 41 years. And that's their recrudescence. They are striking back. The Empire is striking back. Well, they sell you a Star Wars movie called that name, but it's actually dealing with the Jesuits. Interesting connection, huh? Through a recrudescence of diplomatic activities, as her cleverly concealed scheme is to divide in order to reign, she tried to turn every conflict in her favor. Now, according to the plan of Loyola's subjects, the dogma of papal infallibility greatly favored this action of the Holy See, whose importance can be measured from the fact that most states have a diplomatic representative accredited to it. Well, we know that today, right? An embassy of the Vatican is in all countries. Under the cover of dogma and morals, or as the Freemasons would rather put it Morals and Dogma from Albert Pike. Under the cover of Dogma and Morals, subjects which in principle restrict the infallible word, the Pope today disposes of an unlimited authority over the consciences of the faithful. So, during the 20th century, we see the Vatican actively engaged in their interior and exterior politics of countries, and even govern them thanks to Catholic parties. What's more, we will see it support providential men such as Mussolini and Hitler, who, because of its help, will unleash the worst kind of catastrophes. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, we are reading this book and we are to learn from the past. And when here it says, what's more, we will see it support providential men such as Mussolini and Hitler, I want to add the following: and the puppets of the future. Because Mussolini and Hitler were puppets. We saw this already, and if we didn't, we're gonna see that in the future. I can tell you, because I read the German book completely, and we will see that. They're all just puppets. And we have to take into account the puppets of the future, like, for example, Trump, Putin, or even this Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name there in North Korea is. They are all puppets of the Vatican to help achieve what? Well, divide in order to reign, divide and conquer. To achieve that, providential men such as Mussolini and Hitler will unleash the worst kind of catastrophes. We have not seen the worst kind of catastrophes yet. What Mussolini and Hitler did, I tell you, compared to what is coming to us, is playing in kindergarten. Christ's vicar acknowledged profusely the services of this famous society, the Society of Jesus, remind you, which worked so hard and well in his favor. The sons of Satan, as some brave ecclesiastics qualified them, are all tarnished, but they can, in return, boast about the august testimonial of complete satisfaction accorded to them by the deceased Pope Pius XII, whose confessor, we know, was a German Jesuit, Augustin Beer. In this text published by Lacroix on the 19th of August 1955, we can read, quote, "The Church does not want auxiliaries of another type than those of this company. May the sons of Loyola strive to follow the footprints of former ones." That's why you have a book from a very renowned author, The Footprints of the Jesuits. I don't know if it's R.W. Thompson, or I don't want to say anything wrong in that regard, but you have this book, The Footprints of the Jesuits. And I was thinking of that when I read this a little earlier on, that the Church does not want auxiliaries of another type than those of this company. The Church only wants auxiliaries of the type of the Jesuits. May the sons of Loyola strive to follow the footprints of former ones, meaning march in their own footprints, so that the way that has been set will be continued. Today, like yesterday, they are doing just that, to the great evil of the nations. And I hope that you understand what we have just read. I was just quoting from a newspaper, Lacroix, and we will learn more about that when we read the next chapter, which is the Jesuits in France from 1817 until 1885, and also the chapter after that. We will read much more about the publication, the newspaper Lacroix, but we just read a little quote from there. Today, and please, brothers and sisters, understand that today in 2017, not only the time of the writing of this book, meaning first of all the publication of this article by Lacroix in 1955, or the publishing of the book The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris in 1975, but see this also in relation to 2017, where we are now. Today, like yesterday, the Jesuits are doing just that, to the great evil of the nations. And with that, I want to stop the reading for today. It has been a little over an hour, but I hope it was exciting enough that you kept your attention to it. And of course, you can read along in your own copy of the book. You can read along in the own PDF, or you can try to read along on the screen. I hope the resolution is good enough that you can follow me reading that on your screen. I hope you enjoyed this little new history lesson, and do your own research on the 1260 days. Read Romanism and the Reformation, or follow Tom Friess's book reading on my channel, where I put that up, and you can get that book also for free on the internet, Romanism and the Reformation, from Henry Grattan Guinness from 1887. And also read The Two Babylons from Alexander Hislop from 1853. You know, these historians, that's the most important point that I want to make. These two historians, Alexander Hislop and Henry Grattan Guinness, they were not influenced by the Seventh-day Adventist, like all the teachers, or most of the teachers that run around today, and that you hear and see preaching on YouTube and everywhere else. They are all influenced by the Seventh-day Adventists and their teaching. And sometimes it helps to look not there where the mass is looking, because the mass, the majority, remember, is always wrong. And don't forget to read your Bibles. I want to lay that close to your heart. Do your own studies, do your own research, but next to all the other books, please read your Bible. If any important Bible, of course, my opinion is the 1611 King James Bible. So I want to thank you for watching and listening and commenting on the videos, and I'm looking forward to the next reading when we go into chapter 7 and discuss France between 1870 and 1885, and also the time after that, with the Dreyfus affair, is becoming a very interesting part of this book, I can tell you. So thank you very much for watching, for listening, and I'll see you next time. Until next time, Joggler66 from Hour of the Truth signing off. It says God bless you and bye-bye.
Especially I work in dealing with the infiltration of churches and religious institutions as well as government. That cover a tremendous number of institutions.
And the purpose of that infiltration was what for?
Well, the purpose is what the Roman Catholic system has all the time as her own purpose, is to infiltrate, to penetrate all the areas of life where the Roman Catholic can have control and access for the coming world government.
Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men.
As a graduate of another great Jesuit institution, Xavier University, I have great affection for the value and purpose of the Jesuit education.
What that means is, in preparation for that world government, the Roman Catholic institution, especially since the establishment of the Jesuit order in 1541, throughout all these 500 years, they've been in preparation, and through infiltration and penetration of every level of society, in order to take over the world politically and religiously.
What a beautiful day the Lord has made. Holy Father, on behalf of Michelle and myself, welcome to the White House.
There are two doctrines that define very well these dangerous goals of the Roman Catholic institution. Two doctrines define this very well. One is called the doctrine of the apostolic succession, and that is dealing with the papacy. and the other is the doctrine, the temporal power, and that is dealing with world government. Of course, both, because you can see that even the Pope and his own individual office, he meet those requirements. He is not only the head of his church, as he called himself, John Paul II, the present Pope. He said he is the pastor of his church. He is not only that, but he is the head of his state.
It is a sign, perhaps, of how far we have come in this country that today's news of formal recognition between the governments of the United States and the Vatican did not create a furor. Once upon a time, it would have. Once upon a time, and not all that long ago, it did.
From the time of President Washington, there was the first president to be utilized by the Jesuits. If you were not aware of that, President Washington already was initiated by the Jesuits to bring about the first communication with the Vatican ever known in this country. From there on, President Reagan, to all this time, President Reagan has come to fulfill the greatest moment in the history of this conspiracy.